Hello and welcome back to Assetto Corsa EVO. Thank you very much for joining me in today's video, and I'm currently in version 0.4.1 of Assetto Corsa EVO, so there has been a hotfix. I'm not exactly sure when this came out. I think it was a couple of days ago, or the day before I'm recording this, and a couple of days before you see this. But anyway, I have no idea what's in that hotfix. I didn't actually read it, so I'm not entirely certain what is in that hotfix, but it isn't going to have any bearing on what I'm doing today. Today I'm going to be driving two Formula 1 cars. One that you see in front of you, which was introduced in version 0.4, the Ferrari SF-25, and I'm going to be comparing that against the Ferrari F2004. Now, obviously, the SF-25, if you've watched the Formula 1 season, is not a vehicle that was all too well received, and a lot of people are probably happy to see the back of it. However, Kunos have put in a lot of effort in getting this vehicle to Assetto Corsa EVO, and of course it has a whole raft of features with different engine maps and messing around with charge settings or SOC settings, state of charge settings, ERS modes, the DRS, what else does it probably have? Diff settings, brake bias, of course, and a whole raft of other things. So I'm going to try it out at Monza, and then I'm going to compare it against the Ferrari F2004, which was introduced a couple of updates ago, and I've driven it once a little bit, and I found that it wasn't quite right. I think with version 0.4, things should feel much, much better. Now, I am going to caveat this with the fact that I'm not going to be doing any setup changes. I'm going to be taking these out at Monza, which was also introduced in version 0.4, but because I'm not going to be doing any setup changes, there is a high possibility that neither car is going to perform anywhere near what it should be doing in qualifying or the race for the actual Grand Prix. So there we go. With that said, make sure you stay tuned and let's get started. Okay, so I'm going to be driving this at Monza, and I'm going to put 50 litres of fuel into just under half a tank, because I think that will give me enough to drive this around. And one thing that I have already noticed, which is pretty good, is that if we change the tyre compounds, the colours change, and if we change the actual compound from slicks to inters or wets, you will actually see a slight change in the suspension setup, because a slick tyre and the wet tyres actually do have slightly different radiuses or radii, and that has a slight impact. So we're going to go for slick soft, because I think that's probably the fairest that we're going to be able to do. I'm going to leave all of this in whatever this is. I do have these set up on my steering wheel. There is a lot that we can change here. So there is some aero stuff. Dampers, interestingly, cannot be changed, but it is mainly these electronics that can be changed and changed on the fly. So we're going to see just how all of this pans out as we get on track. So let's go ahead and do that. It does appear a little bit close to me, but that's okay. One thing that I have learnt is that now we can move these around. We cannot get rid of them yet, I think. Yeah, we cannot get rid of them, but we can move them around, and that's quite useful. It's old style Assetto Corsa, but honestly, they are all pretty much fine for me. Right, let's have a look at what we have. Let's get the ignition on. There we go. Okay, car is on. Now, I'm not going to say I'm going to be the best driver at any of this. I do have a lot of these engine modes mapped in, so some of that should help me. Yeah, so I do have recharge mode right there as well, so I can always mess around with that. What else do I have available to me? Let's see, I've got performance modes, so that's race mode, that's Lyco, that's charge mode, that's wet. So realistically we're going to want charge, so we're going to want mode 4, probably mode 3, maybe 2. I won't go for push right now, so let's sit in mode 5, and you can see it on the screen in front. So we've got the charge. Brake balance I can mess around with a little, and that button does nothing at the moment. I'm sure I can figure something out with it. Right, let's get this in gear. That was strangely a very easy move off there. Now, of course, this is my first time at Monza in Assetto Corsa EVO, so we'll start getting a feeling for Monza as well as this vehicle, just see how it responds. Interesting, clutch response on that was interesting. And we'll see how this vehicle also loads up, so I'm expecting it to really load my wheel quite a bit. Rear locking, so I'll probably be looking to bring that brake balance forward a little. Now it's also, I should point out, I do have cold brakes, so I'm expecting, actually, because of that, I'm probably going to do that for now. And just start to ease into it, warming up the brakes a bit. Let's warm up the tyres a little. See some warming up of the outer carcass on the insides. Okay, still in charge mode, but we'll start pushing the first little bits. The car really doesn't go very fast, does it, when it's in charge mode? Still a bit of rear locking. Let's see if I can mitigate that rear locking a touch. Which I'm surprised at, because I would expect there to be far less rear locking I would expect there to be far less rear locking into the hairpin. Downforce levels are interesting. I've got good feeling from this car, I will say that though. There's good feedback in the wheel. Definitely good feedback in the wheel for the feeling that I'm getting. It does feel a little bit unstable on the rear though, I will say that. Okay, let's start actually getting this working a little bit faster. Let's try and get a bit more speed out of it. I'm just starting by looking at the, oh dear. Brakes are not great. I'm just starting by looking at the display and all the information that's available on it. So I've got, what do I have here? I've got tyre temperatures, so that's useful. Looks like carcass temperatures to me, but that is quite useful. Gear, of course, the mode that I'm in, my delta, how much time I've got left in the session, brake balance. I've got CL. I'm not sure what CL is. Got my mode, my state of charge. I can see my sock right there. Okay, I mean it's not bad. Let's go ahead and start getting this into different modes. So there we go. We're now in race mode, whatever that means. DRS. I do have DRS as well. I'll start pressing the DRS button at points and start really getting some heat into the tyres, start getting some movement going. Brakes are starting to feel a little bit better, a little bit more alive. We're still in charge mode, that's fine. Brakes are definitely starting to feel better. I have to admit, this car does feel a bit sluggish. I'm not sure what the best way to describe this is. Let's see what other modes do I have again? Not that, not that. That was fairly alright. What are the modes? Is it this one? Engine map. Not sure what mode that needs to be in. It's just really messing around with the different modes. 1 minute 32. Car's definitely slowing down now. Now I'm starting to feel more power as well in the vehicle. And that's ERS overtake. Okay, so I've got some overtake mode as well that I could potentially use. I can brake past the 100 meter board really, although I do need to brake for longer. Into the second chicane, through the Lesmos, careful on the outside. Using the overtake mode a bit. This feels alright. It doesn't. It feels like a bit of an understeery car. It doesn't feel very. I'll be honest. The car does not feel very alive, and it also doesn't. At the same time, it doesn't feel like it's on rails, which is somewhat interesting too. 1 minute 31 now. It's not too bad. Need to brake hard. I must remember this car is capable of braking. This car is definitely capable of braking. Which mode is the mode I want? So there is a manual that comes with this car. I will point that out, and I've not really read it. There we go, we're now in some sort of push mode. Okay. I will use that mode on the next lap. Got it. There's a lot to press. Just looking down at my wheel, there is a lot to press. I think I can brake later than the 100-meter board there as well. It does have reasonable grip through Ascari. Right, let's try that. Let's see what this does. Oh, there's definitely more power there. Look at that. Without a shadow of a doubt. Need to put the brake bias forward. In fact, I might do that for this one. So this is, I'm assuming this is qualifying mode that I'm currently in. Because suddenly the car does feel a lot more alive. Right, let me press K1. Because why not? Use all the battery possible. 1.7 seconds. I mean, that's a big difference there. 2 seconds. 1:29.7 straight away. Interesting, when it does lock, it doesn't really, there isn't too much feeling on the lock. What's mode 3 again? It's all mode 4 Lyco. And I think I could have easily taken another second out of that. But okay, feeling a little bit more about this car. Not the most comfortable car, but very detailed. Extremely detailed. So yes, props to Kunos for that. Even, for example, when the DRS is available, you have the green dot on your rev indicator showing that you have DRS available. There isn't the beep, but that's fine. Should we go for another push lap, shall we? And then the second green dot to let you know that DRS is open. Very good. Bit of wheel spin out of the first chicane. Very anti-alter? No, that's this one, isn't it? Not entirely certain now. Too fast. And yet somehow managing to survive. Sort of messed that up, but it's okay. Because I did a little bit better at Ascari. And this does start giving you a bit of a feeling of how easy it is to make a mistake or change one thing in and out of a corner, and you'll see a change of a tenth or a tenth and a half. I mean, you just look at that, and I made a tenth and a half. Now, the moment my charge runs out, you're going to see the difference in battery power, and you'll see the difference immediately in speed as well. So this charge is not going to last the entire lap, I do not believe. It shouldn't anyway. Look at that, 2.5, 3 tenths gained. Four tenths. Half a second. Yet we're almost out of battery. We are going to run out right at the death, I believe. Let's see if I can just about manage to get this 4 tenths, and you're about to see the time just disappear. Use everything I've got, but there isn't anything left. And look at that time just disappear. 1:29.5. Let's go into a charge mode. Does first gear work around here? I don't think so. No, it's definitely second. Let's get that battery charged. There we go. And we'll go for another push lap. Really starting to stamp on the brakes now as well. Just to get a feeling for how hard I can actually stamp on them. It's not bad. Honestly, it's not bad. It looks, it feels, it sounds fairly accurate to a 2025 F1 car. In terms of driving, it also feels a little bit... I can feel the sluggishness of a heavy vehicle, but also I can feel the downforce as it does load up. So there is that. Let's go again. Pushing as hard as I can. Well, not as hard as I can, because I will then just crash. Try to minimise the understeer there. The understeer, the wheel spin there, but it didn't quite work out the way I wanted it to. And that's probably cost me. Yep, that's definitely this section has cost me quite a bit. But I should gain that 2 tenths back just by with the benefit of having the battery available to me. Having that battery available to me at the end of this. In fact, somehow that was faster, but I'm definitely going to gain some back right at the end of this lap. There we go. Look at that. Half a tenth. 6/10. There we go. 128.8. And when you change the performance mode, you do hear it. Now, I think I need to adjust, maybe a slight adjustment on the brake balance might help me a little bit more. There we go, we'll do that. What other buttons do I have available to me? That's my ERS recharge. That's probably something I can get rid of. And then this is my engine map, which I have no idea. Let's go for engine map 1 and see what the... I'm not sure what the difference is with those. Just looking at the... I'm just going to flick around these engine maps. See what the difference is. Doesn't appear to be anything that's showing. Apart from it just says engine 5. So I'm not entirely certain which one's which. Again, this is available in a manual that I have not read. Let's go for another one. At the moment, almost bang on target. Too much wheel spin out of that corner again. I was a tenth up, but I messed up. And too slow around there. Interesting, no need for brakes there. That's not what I was expecting. Much lighter tap on the brakes. I guess this is now me starting to feel the downforce levels of this car and say, yep, okay, I can definitely do X, Y, and Z with it. Much slower through there. I'm not sure how I did the run I did in the last one. Just pushing everything I've got. Well, that didn't work. But okay, you know what? 128.8. I'm okay with that for my very first time driving this car. It's a little bit of rear locking there that I need to work out. And then for good measure, just spin it around. Right there, let's have a quick look at the replay. And, ooh, why is the wheel turning that way? Hold on. There's my wheel. My wheel is straight. Why does it want to do that? Okay. There we go, wheel is straight. Ah, it's okay to stay straight now. That was odd. That's really odd. Now let's go more to this area and just have a look. I'm assuming that light is on because I was on recharge. Although I have DRS open, so I'm not entirely certain that light should be on. It doesn't actually sound that... No, it sounds a bit like that. Vacuum cleaners. That's what these V6 engines really are. A downshift doesn't sound quite as what I would expect. From the inside, it sounds okay. I say okay. You'll see in a moment what, in my opinion, what an F1 car really should be sounding like. It's relatively fast. I was making good use of a lot of the track. One thing I will say about this vehicle is it did take me a few laps, but I started getting a feeling for where the edge of the vehicle was. So that's pretty good. Modelling wise, I think it looks fantastic. But I did definitely start getting a feeling for... I'm not sure why though that red light is flashing. It definitely should not be. I definitely did start getting a feeling for where the edge of the track was. Obviously, not perfectly, because there's still a few inches that I could make use of. Let's try this lap. Still has that light on. Maybe it's because I need to get it out of the pits. Will the light switch off if I do that? There we go. It's out of the pits. Should the light now switch off? No. It's odd. Very odd. Well, let's go for lap 10 anyway. It's really starting to push up against the limits of the track, at least out of Parabolica. Here, I could probably go a little bit. I'm still leaving a tiny amount on the table there. Slightly too fast into the first apex. Here the vehicle bogged down a bit. That gear change is interesting. I never hear these pops in Formula 1. That's a good view. Absolutely never ever heard those pops in Formula 1. I could probably carry a little bit more speed out of that. In fact, I think that there is one vehicle that used to do that a little, and I think it's the Honda powertrain on downshift does have a little bit of that crackle, maybe not the pop. But this upshift pop, I've never heard it. Honestly, in terms of driving it, the car felt not the best to drive, I'll be honest. It was a little bit understeery, somewhat sluggish, but well modelled, very well made, and it did feel, one of the important things is it felt like a heavy Formula 1 car. That is definitely one thing it did feel like. So that's definitely a credit to Kunos. It felt like a heavy Formula 1 car. I could feel the downforce loading up on the vehicle as well. See there, oh actually I think this is a cool down lap. Yes, this definitely appears to be a cool down lap. It's weird how that camera is really dark compared to the rest of these. And having to heat up the brakes, having the brakes locking right at the start and then being able to stamp on them more and more and more, so it does show that they have thought about this very, very well. And Monza looks lovely. Still confused about the flashing power lights. Anyway. Probably something I've done, or maybe a bug in the replay system. I'm not entirely certain. Another push lap, and then we shall swap over to the F2004. But was this a push lap? A little bit of sliding, I think this was. I definitely can brake later there, but I need to brake harder. That's the one thing that I was not feeling, at least in these first 12 laps that I've done. I wasn't quite feeling the ability to stamp on the brakes. I was starting to feel the edges of the track, the way I could attack certain corners, but I didn't quite have the confidence to. In certain, especially down to the first chicane, and this might be a brake balance thing, this could be a diff thing. I wasn't feeling quite as confident in stamping on the brakes into the first chicane, the second chicane. The Lesmo seemed fine. In fact, I learned that I didn't really have to brake so much through them. Ascari was fine because it's a much more higher speed corner. But yes, okay, let's go ahead and. For photos later, I'm going to save that, and let's go ahead and go to the main menu and jump into something a little bit older. I say a little bit older, a lot older, and a lot smaller. Just look at that change, by the way. Look at the size difference between that and that. That is a massive size difference. 2026 Formula 1 cars are going to be better, of course. I still think they're going to be a little big. I have my reservations about certain parts of the vehicle, but that's not what today's video is about. So, similar sort of thing. So this only has softs, intermediates and wets. That is why I went with the softs, by the way. So 150 litres for a full tank. I'm going to give this one 60 litres, and we'll see how many laps I can manage with that, because of course this vehicle has refueling. We had in-race refueling, ignition, clutch in. Doesn't sound as loud as I was thinking it would. Interesting. What modes do we have on this vehicle? Absolutely nothing. Brake balance is something. Oh, we do have traction control on this, which I am going to try and reduce to. I think I'll reduce the traction control to 2 and start working with that. Now immediately this vehicle feels far more agile. Like just doing that, it feels so much more agile. That's fine. However, I will say, immediately the brakes do not feel as strong. Now that could be to do with the fact that this is on the good old 13-inch wheels, as opposed to the 18-inch wheels that came in 2000 and... was that 2022? When the 18-inch wheels came in? I do not particularly like those wheels. Go back to these. And I will stand by. So 128.5 is what we're going to be looking to beat within 12 laps. That is what I want to be able to do. Get those brakes warmed up a little. So yes, 128.5 is what I'm going to be looking to beat within 12 laps. Of course, this vehicle does not have DRS, it does not have ERS, it just has some basic traction control and no brakes apparently. Okay, that's an interesting start. Compared to the SF-25, one big difference, brakes. The tyres are also a little bit colder. I might need to warm up the brakes or brake a lot earlier. Downforce is definitely missing as well, but that would make sense. This is a much older aero setup. In fact, this is sort of what they are tending towards in 2026. So I'm going to have to be a little bit more careful with that. But honestly, this is my preferred vehicle. This is definitely my preferred vehicle of choice. It's harder to drive. This is definitely the harder vehicle to drive. I can immediately say that. It does not stick on rails. This makes the SF-25 seem like a vehicle that is on rails, and we all know the SF-25 is not a vehicle on rails. I need to really be able to. So the biggest thing that's letting this vehicle down is going to be that low end torque or lack thereof. No, the biggest thing letting this vehicle down is the groove tyres, and I will say that I believe that should this vehicle be given some slick tyres, this will easily be faster than modern F1. The current regulation, I say the current regulation, the regulation that's just gone, the ground effect regulation, Formula 1 cars, I think this will be faster. And in fact, I think this will still hold up as the fastest F1 car this generation. Maybe not the Ferrari itself, possibly the BMW at points, which is the Williams at the time, the BMW Williams. That or this Ferrari, or on occasion McLaren, depending. So the the 2003 McLaren was pretty fast. That sound is great. That's more like it. Now we're starting to get a feeling for this. So remember, 1:28.5 to beat within 12 laps. It's still... So you really have to... I'm not sure, it's not so much throw this car into a corner, it's more coax the car into the corner gently. It is an aggressive vehicle. It's definitely an aggressive vehicle, but because it's so light and so agile, you have to make sure that you're not going to over rotate it. That is the biggest issue with this vehicle, is over rotation. I think I want to push that brake bias forward a bit, or under rotation in this case. That was bad. 1:28.3. I've already beaten the SF-25. Let's see if first gear actually does anything out of this. First gear is actually useful in this vehicle. That's something the SF-25 obviously does not. First gear is not useful in that, apart from at Monaco, where, yeah, I would say that first gear is probably useful in every Formula 1 car ever, that was better. This is more of a point and shoot car in a sense. Turn it in, power out. Very, but it has to be a smooth turning. Don't just throw the car in a sense. If you throw the car in, you're going to cause issues. You're definitely going to cause issues if you throw the car in, but it does take a bit of it can take a bit of movement. And I say don't throw the car in compared to the SF-25. I am throwing this car in. I'm definitely throwing this car into corners. 1:27.7. I'm already nearly a second up. It just feels better. It just feels so much better once. Of course, I should have let traction control sort that out. I think that if this is just an opinion again, I think that if this had slick tyres, traction control would not even be required on this vehicle. It's just these groove tyres that were designed, they were specifically designed to slow F1 cars down. I should point that out. It wasn't that they were there for any other reason. They were there to slow these cars down. All of them. Slicks on this would be phenomenally good, I think. I was going to say that did not hold. However, and case in point there, if you lose control of the car, it's much harder to catch. Much harder to catch. Simply because it's just such a... It's so violent when it goes. First gear in this car is slightly better when you do jump into it than a modern F1 car. But again, it's because you do not need that first gear. But one of the things that I can definitely give Kunos credit for then is that these two vehicles, they're both Ferraris, they are 21 years apart from each other, and they feel unbelievably different to each other. They really do. And that's a really good thing. There is absolutely no similarity in the way the two vehicles drive, apart from one thing that, and I've been complaining about this in every video, it's better. I did mention that this is much better now than what it was previously. There is still this odd feeling of understeer, which there is more of it in the SF-25 than there is in this, and I just think that's just because that car is just more understeery. That is why I think it's in that vehicle more. Only 0.1 of a second, which is still a big difference. But this is a vehicle I could drive around all day long, I think. I do think I could drive this vehicle around all day long and say, yes, I'm going to get much better at this one. That was very slow. That was very slow too. However, the SF-25, And I think this is just, as I said, the style of car, not what Kunos have done. It's just a style of car. It's not a car I could drive around a lot. I would just get bored of it, really. I need to go back and watch qualifying for the 2004 Italian Grand Prix to see what lines and times that the drivers were doing. Slight front locking, that's fine. That was much better. See if I can do that into the second chicane. Nope, can't do it. That's a shame. It is harder. It is definitely, this car is more difficult to drive. But at the same time, and this is the weird thing, it is more difficult to drive, and yet I feel that this car is far more comfortable for, at least maybe it's just for my style of driving. This car just feels more comfortable, and maybe I need to make some adjustments to the SF-25 so that it is more suited to my style. Maybe that is something that I need to do. I'm not entirely certain. Still slightly, I think I need to brake just ever so slightly earlier because I'm having to go, I end up going deep into the first chicane. See here in the SF-25 there is no braking. So there is that. That is then the sheer downforce from the aerodynamics. I think that in 2026 that is going to be a big difference. Even through all of this, I can just downshift and then foot flat to the floor. Cannot do that in this vehicle. And that is where the extra difficulty in these comes in. You have to, you really have to modulate your throttle. I can go way faster than this. I know I can. That is much better. Although then I botched it by wheel spinning. I had 2.5 tenths right there, then I botched it. Slightly better. Somewhat better. I have varying standards of better. Mostly poor, but then we have a little better, slightly better, somewhat better, a lot better, marginally better is another one. Ooh. Somehow I managed to keep hold of that car. I know I could count this lap because I've definitely lost time, but I know the computer won't count it. That was a 27.2. Let's do another lap. Not great. Tenth and a bit down because I braked too early. And that was picking up the accelerator too late. That was interesting. Somehow managed to gain 2/10. And this is, I guess I could do this with the SF-25 to be fair to that vehicle. I could do this with the SF-25, but it's just not as interesting. As I said, because like a Scari, you brake, you downshift, and then you just flat. You just flat through the lot, and that's a bit dull. I would much rather not be flat through them. 27-1. Too fast. Although I've managed to somehow make another 2/10. That's because the braking was better, but then I was too fast through the next bit. Maybe first gear is a better option through this. First gear is a better option through this. That's too slow. But somehow I'm another half a second up. The times keep tumbling for this vehicle. And honestly, I am all for it. And starting to learn it. And I'm not even messing around with things like brake bias at the moment. .4 of a second. 26.7. That's what we're now down to. Rolled off the brakes way too early there. Way too early for rolling off the brakes. And then a touch on the grass for good measure. Keep that in close. That's probably a better option as well. And now I'm actually starting to push this vehicle. Because it's starting to get a little bit more skatey. Well, that's 12 laps done in this one too. So at the end of this lap, I shall go to the replay. So even there, the car just wanted to let go on me. 26.433. Should I keep going? Should I keep going? For example, just trying to get this first. It's better. Still isn't great, but it is better. Staying really more to the inside now. This is the last lap. Definitely the last lap. For this video, anyway. Oh, I'm going to lose time all the way down the straight there because I didn't accelerate correctly out of the end of Scari. That's a shame. That's still another 10th and a half up. 26.301, and you know what? I'll let it go there. And let's go over to a replay, shall we? How do I go to neutral? There we go. Okay, off to a replay. Just straight into the first lap. Is there somewhere where I can check my fastest laps? I think there is. I sort of want to go back into the SF-25 just to give it a go. This sounds a little bit more realistic from the outside. Should we go more to the faster laps as I did? Let's go over to the faster laps. So that took me, I think, 3 laps to beat the SF-25. Now, I am going to now caveat that. Should have probably caveated that earlier on. This is Monza. So, if this was a more technical track, this vehicle would probably be slower, simply because of the tyres. Yes, simply because of the tyres, I think this vehicle would have been slower. But the speed that I could start carrying through this vehicle and how quickly I could do that. This is so far that's what, a 1.5, no, it's a 28.5 to a 26.3. So it's a 2.2 second difference with these vehicles. That's fairly realistic. That is fairly realistic. And so with that 2.2, that was a little bit of a wobbly moment, that's for sure. 2.2 seconds difference, that's nothing to sniff at. That much is for certain. But I do also find this car just more suited to my driving style. Even as I'm starting to push it more and more and more and try and learn. So for example, it wasn't until the end that I realised that first gear is more useful. And the other thing about this car, which is really good for hot lapping, does not really play so much of a factor in a race. There isn't any of this electrical energy to change the recharge mode to this, engine map to this, and charge for this many laps, and then you'll see the lap time slow down. And no, it's just go. There's the engine, there's the tyres, there's the aero, off you go. Do what you want every single lap until the tyres die. And then come in, top up your fuel, get new tyres, off you pop again. Less management, less tyre management, less component management. That was the era in which this car was designed. But hopefully that gives you a reasonable comparison of somebody who hasn't really driven these cars. I drove this car once in version 0.2. Was it 0.2, 0.3? I drove this car once. There were some serious understeer issues at that point, in my opinion, and the car did not particularly feel right on gear shifts either. It feels so much better now. So really, this is effectively the first time I've actually pushed this car. And such a lovely sound too. And there is something about V10 and also with that inline 5, the reason that it is such a pleasant sound. It's to do with harmonics and harmonic resonance and sound and sound waves and tones and things like that, which gives it this particular noise, which is something V6s do not have. V12s also, in a sense, do not have that. Honestly, V6s would sound good if they weren't the way Formula 1 does it. Other V6s do sound good, and the older V6s in F1 sounded pretty good. V12s can sound good, V8s can sound good. There's another wobble. Much more difficult to drive this car, in my opinion. Anyway, that is where I'm going to end this video. Thank you very much for watching. Please remember to click on the like button if you like this video, subscribe to the channel for more videos on Assetto Corsa EVO. Leave a comment in the comments box below letting me know what you think, any suggestions you might have. What car and track should I try next? If you can do so, please do consider supporting me on Patreon, link in the description box below, as are links to my social media and Discord server. That is all from me, and I shall see you next time in Assetto Corsa EVO, where off on the grass I go. Maybe there's a possibility I should go off to Alton Park. Never really driven at Alton Park, so maybe I'll do that, but I'll have to figure out which car to drive around there. So if you have a suggestion, please do let me know. I'll see you next time.